What is the IT strategy for the U.S. Department of State? How is the U.S. Department of State modernizing its IT systems and infrastructure? And what are the benefits and risks of generative AI in supporting U.S. diplomacy? I'll explore these questions and so much more with my very special guest, Dr. Kelly Fletcher, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Department of State. With such a global reach and a portfolio that's that significant, operating within a federated model as well, what are some of your top management challenges that you face in your role, and how have you sought to address them?
Yeah, this is a great question. And what I can say is, so when I came from DoD to state, I did one thing really wrong. And that was on a Thursday, I was in the Pentagon, and on a Monday, I was at the State Department. And I would encourage everyone to learn from that. That is not enough time off between jobs. But what it allowed me to do was to see very much like I came just from the Pentagon and now I'm in a new place and we are having the same conversations, right? I'm in a different room, I'm talking to different people, but we are having the same conversations about challenges. And that's really this legacy debt, right? So I inherited legacy debt at the Pentagon. I've inherited so much legacy debt here at State. And that's systems, right? That's like old systems that are sort of, clunky. We've all used old systems. That's my infrastructure, right? My telephones. I looked at my telephones and thought, oh no, what decade are these from? And then also that's, like, for example, even my architectures. So the way our network works today is that all of our traffic, wherever you are in the world, you get hoovered back to DC. That really, really made sense when we made that decision 20 years ago. It does not make sense today. So that's one thing, is just a bunch of legacy debt. And then the other thing I want to highlight is, and this is both a challenge and an opportunity, is I arrived at the State Department just as generative AI is really sort of getting widely used in the world. And I can say, like, this makes me really excited and a little bit scared because it changes our cybersecurity needs. And also it's going to open up a whole new range of things that we can do for the workforce. And the last thing I want to talk about, and this was at DoD as well, is, the changing shape of the workforce and workers. So not just in very, very recent memory of COVID and work from home and all of that, but also this idea of government service and, how long is a career in the government? And I think my generation is sort of at the inflection point where I would be surprised, if I spent 20 years at the government, but not that surprised. And many of my friends are, they're going to do a 20-year career, a 30-year career in one place. But we're seeing a change in the workforce. So how do we recruit and train and retain the right people and also allow them opportunities to grow?
So I want to talk about, I go from leading, your ideas about leading, and then I want to talk about the vision and strategy you have for IT at State. I was hoping you could tell us more about that IT strategy and perhaps highlight some of your strategic priorities in this area.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, I first came to State and I sat down with my boss and I said, hey, I'm going to do all these really cool cybersecurity things that are going to make us more secure. And he said, great ideas, Kelly. Also, we need you to improve the user experience. And we need you to know what the user experience is. So please go to the field. So this actually gets back to a little bit of this global, at DoD, I traveled a lot. I traveled internationally some. My friends and family said, oh, you're going to work for the State Department. I bet you'll travel so much. And I said, don't be ridiculous. I travel a lot for DoD. And I was wrong. That was just completely wrong. Since I have been here, I've had the opportunity to see so many different locations, just to name a few, like Sydney, Fiji, Bangkok, New Delhi, Frankfurt, Brussels, Bogota, Nairobi, like it goes on. So this to me has been very beneficial, in addition to being pretty amazing. Sort of trying to identify, what do the folks in the field need? Because in many cases, they just need a way to communicate with their colleagues, their foreign, interlocutors who they talk to regularly. What do they need to do that? So I've one example of this, and that's WhatsApp. So coming from a different organization, we did not use WhatsApp for communication. But globally, and I think, people who travel, who have friends abroad, they know, WhatsApp is a really common way to communicate. And so as I was talking to ambassadors, talking to folks at embassies, I kept hearing over and over, I need to be able to use WhatsApp to communicate with the folks in country. And so we actually sat down and came up with an architecture that I feel like is the most secure way to get that done. And so this is an example of really how are we coupling improved cybersecurity with a customer experience that enables these relationships, which is really our core business. And then the other thing I'm trying to do is, I think there's a subset of work we do where consistency is really the critical thing, right? We all, there are technologies that are well understood. Wi-Fi, it's going to be the same. We're going to have a similar architecture everywhere we go. Collaboration suite. We don't need a bunch of these. We need one or two. But there are other areas where there's new technology. So I'm thinking generative AI, I'm thinking machine learning, and I really try to be flexible. We have a lot of folks doing very interesting and meaningful work in these spaces. And we put some bumpers on there, for cybersecurity. But I believe that this is a place where 1,000 flowers should bloom. We should know what's happening. We should know who's trying what. And then in a couple years, we're going to have to sort of cull this down. You know what I mean? But I love the flexibility in emerging technologies.
That's a wonderful transition into my next question. It's around IT modernization. I'm wondering what you're doing in that regard, and specifically around your network modernization initiative. What could you tell us about that? And what are some of the benefits and some of the challenges associated with doing this?
Yeah, so we're modernizing our network through something we're calling TRON, which is the Transport Only Network.
Mhm.
And right now, we are still, we've got some pilots going. This is coupled with Wi-Fi, which, this is actually an example of improving cybersecurity and customer experience. So folks at an embassy, they know what Wi-Fi is. They like Wi-Fi. We roll out Wi-Fi. When I talk to them about TRON, which is what's happening behind the wall, they don't care. And that's the right feeling to have, right? They just want to consume the network, go about their business. So we're trying to combine these two things together. What Tron is doing is instead of all of our traffic from wherever you are in the world getting hoovered back to DC and then going to wherever it's going, whatever cloud environment, we are going to have traffic go to where it needs to go more directly. The other thing we're doing as part of Tron is being more intentional with our architecture and where our data is. So I will tell you, like maybe 2 years ago, I thought, what, everything in the cloud, nothing edge. Why would we have something edge? I don't think that that's a modern viewpoint. We need to have some edge store and compute in most places. Sometimes we may use regional capabilities. But right now, I have some on the edge, I have some regional, I have some in the cloud. That looks right. Only the way that this has grown up is totally organically. So it's not clear to me that we have the right services and data in the right places.
So, Kelly, given the evolving nature of cyber threats, can you elaborate on your efforts to enhance IT security across the enterprise? And would you tell us more about the department's zero trust strategy and how it factors in to securing systems and infrastructure?
Yeah, so zero trust is one of our big pushes, sort of along with the rest of the federal government, certainly.
Mhm.
And I would say we're initially focusing on identity and networks.
Okay.
And so we've been rolling out our identity solution. And again, we get to this really federated model where every system owner needs to ensure that they're consuming identities from the right source. And then networks, this is where we get into the TRON model, the transport only network that we're moving to. The other thing I would say is, sort of adjacent to zero trust and, certainly inherent to it is we're just improving our cybersecurity readiness generally. And I want to
Mhm.
give a shout out to our department CISO, Donna Bennett, because under her leadership in the past like 2 to 3 years, we went from multi-factor authentication. This is like a standard thing every system should have. We went from about 12% of our systems having that to over 90%.
Wow.
This is huge. So sometimes I even, I get questions from outside State Department that says like, aren't you worried about your data encryption percentages? And I say like, I mean, yeah, we'd like to get to the last 8%, sure. But there's a narrative out there that we are way behind on these sort of basic readiness measures. And that was true. but it is no longer true. And so that makes a huge difference to our posture today.
So, Kelly, I'd like to transition to data. What are some of the most significant challenges in managing the increasing volume of data and making it accessible to a broader range of stakeholders?
Yeah, this is so I'm really excited about what's happening in data. And Matthew Gravis, the chief data officer at the Department of State, is one of the people who showed up in my office like day 3. And he is doing amazing work. And really, our teams have been partnering. So, to give sort of a highlight of where we are in the movie, what he has been doing is these 6-month-long data campaigns where his organization gets feedback from a bunch of different folks throughout the department who say, hey, here are my problems. Maybe data could solve them. And, truthfully, he's been doing this for a couple of years now. But I think the first year people were like, I don't even know what you mean. You're going to do what to help me solve what? But now they're very popular. So they get some ideas from the field and then help solve a specific problem with data. And I think he said something that just to me is really resonates, which is nobody wants to go to a meeting about data tagging or data architecture. We're not going to build a lot of excitement that way.
Mm-hmm.
The way we're going to build excitement is by solving mission problems with data. So we are partnering with him to do that. And then the one other thing I do want to highlight is the kind of data we have. And this is a place actually where DoD and state are very different. So DoD, a lot of engineers building a lot of things, doing a lot of testing, we're shooting things and we're driving things and there's a ton of quantitative data. And at the State Department, we are a narrative organization. We write cables and they're in narrative format and they're paragraphs of text describing what is happening. So as we sort of move into more and more advanced tools to look at data, I think it's going to give us so many more opportunities to take this narrative data and translate it and combine it and summarize it. It's just going to be incredibly valuable.
Yeah. And, switching gears a little bit, earlier, Kelly, you mentioned the rise of generative AI and its effort and impact on diplomacy. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about some of the benefits and risks of this technology, this innovation in supporting U.S. diplomacy.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think this is a place where I'm really intellectually interested, not even just for my job. So very frankly, we need to better understand these large language models. We sort of what I'm hearing universally is that they present a pretty great risk. And also, I think, as we all know, dramatic promise. So how do we make sure that when we introduce these systems, frankly, to our networks, that we're using these for our business? How are we getting the benefits of these while also being very conscious of security and also the ethical and responsible use of these models? The places where I'm excited today about these models are related to, frankly, language. So just like we have people all over the world, they're looking at the local press. We have many people who have phenomenal language skills. And this is a place where generative AI can help us with language, and can also help our local staff. So we have local staff at every embassy, and English is maybe not their first language. Generative AI can help sort of bridge this language divide, right? It's not perfect. We've all seen examples of generative AI not being perfect, but language is a place where I'm really excited about the capabilities it brings today. I think what we're working to do at State is make sure we're moving with the federal government, moving at a reasonable rate, really talking to the folks who have built these large language models about security, and then moving out as fast as is sort of reasonable when we're comfortable with the ethical and responsible use of these models to use them even for our internal data, right? So we have decades of years of cables. These are incredibly rich and they're narratives. I love the idea of using generative AI to tell us what we already know, frankly.
How concerned are you, Kelly, about our adversaries using quantum computing to hack encrypted government systems?
Frankly, super concerned. This is a thing that when I think about the horizon, this is to me the biggest thing from a national security perspective for us to be concerned about. There's a really good quantum readiness migration sort of fact sheet. It's from NIST, NSA, and CISA that I would recommend that everybody read. very frankly, we think our adversaries may be harvesting our data now, holding on to it, and then hoping to decrypt it later. So for me, quantum resistant cryptography is one of our top priorities. And that was true at DoD. It's here, true at state also.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Dr. Kelly Fletcher, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Department of State. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at iTunes, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast app, and as always at businessofgovernment.org.